Isn't it a glorious day in the world of the sports entertainment for our wonderful, lovely company with no legal issues whatsoever? I, the glorious dictator, Triple H, stand tall above the highest tower of Las Vegas, cheering on as my lovely public smiles upon me. I, the new 2025 WWE Hall of Famer Triple H, bask in the glory of 2 nights of successful WrestleMania, and those pathetic, feeble critics, cannot possibly even complain about the glories of our card and the glories of our company.
Did someone call for the Hubris Fairy? I think we know an agent of chaos who'd be more than happy to disprove your wonderful little delusions there, Hunter. Welcome, for the first time in 2.5 years, to episode 77 of Fizzy's Wacky World of Wrestling. My name is William Fizzpatrick, the inevitable, crazy, chaotic contrarian, the sane person of wrestling. Yes, me. I'm back. I will probably have a larger explanation for you in a future episode, but let's begin with the obvious question. Good afternoon, residents of the land of sin and depravity, Las Vegas, Nevada. It is 74 degrees outside with a wind of east-northeast at 3 miles per hour and wind gust of 5. The air quality is poor, presumably for all the mass burnings of Motorhead CDs that have been happening at the houses of ill repute, because they are literally connected to the devil, and the devil doesn't want any part of that. Yes, you have had to survive for the last week and a half dealing with these professional wrestling creatures and the professional wrestling fans who have become unimaginable Ryback horrors due to the fact that this is WrestleMania week, a time of the year in which every wrestling fan becomes more dangerous than vampires, werewolves, zombies, and sleep paralysis demons combined. In fact, there's currently a queue backed up at the Las Vegas DMV and legal lawsuit area for suing for gimmick infringement. Isn't that wonderful? You only have 2 more days before everything possibly goes back to normal. Although the trauma will be there, but no worries. Those troglodyte Neanderthals over the Ultimate Fighting Championships, the Gold Diggers, and this partnership over at TKO Enterprises are going to lovingly pay for the therapy bills. They at least owe you for that much, and unlike the last time Dana White owed any bills to, let's just call them reputable business people, he can't take a flight from Boston to Las Vegas to pay his dues for the boxing gyms he owes. Yep. Remember that time he hid underneath some boxer's bed when he failed to pay the Bulger gang for the boxer-sized gyms he had in Boston? Their money. This time he can't run away from that. Yeah. He's got that whole Apex Center and that entire monolithic building over there. You've got yourself an easy therapy bill there, residents of Las Vegas. How does it feel to be the normal ones? Lawful, legally law-abiding, completely and utterly sane. I'm pretty certain you're quite upset with those Neanderthals for underselling the amount of pure insanity that the wrestlers were going to do this week. Yes. The Guru yoga con artist that just had its fridge ripped out of its house. And in spite of investing in the strongest chains imaginable, every energy drink or protein product has been eaten out of every Vegas resident's fridge. Yes, even though you invested in vibranium chains. Because as the old adage goes, never feed wrestlers protein products after midnight. So, exactly brings me back into the squared circle of wrestling podcasting after a 2.5-year absence. Oh, a little fairy told me that a certain someone decided to do their great dictator arc this week and go on the largest WrestleMania slash Vegas crash out of Vegas crash outs that I have ever seen an individual do in the history of pro wrestling. He's putting all the legends, Bruno Sammartino, superstar Billy Graham, hey, even the Nature Boy Buddy Rogers to shame with all these, with this wonderful, wonderful amount of material that has been presented to us. Those feeble, pathetic wrestling critics that he thinks have absolutely no sway whatsoever in WWE's product, that we're not real fans, that we're not watching in front of the video screen or in front of the arena like we're Alex DeLarge from Clockwork Orange. Yeah, I get it. I get it that it's upsetting the critics, lambasting you. But when you're literally the worst public relations interviewer I ever seen in my life, a guy who can't go to a press conference without completely tripping over every single softball question, every single pack of marbles, and answering the simplest question in the easiest legal jargonese imaginable, of course you're going to get me rising from my literal grave to talk through a microphone. And as the residents of sin and depravery are currently looking at you and going, when are you going to leave? I didn't think I'd be having to use my master's degree for psychology or my medical degree for treating all the quad injuries, the horrific amount of water damage from people cosplaying Triple H's entrance, and of course those infernal Motorhead CDs. Yes. Yep. Those infernal Motorhead CDs, which have probably been blasting through the Vegas Square pretty much since the start of the invasion. The zombies have fled, the werewolves have had a close shave with wrestling gear makers trying to make last-minute alterations for retro wrestling cards, the vampires have had their coffins turned into tanning beds, the sleep paralysis demons have not been able to get any sleep at all since the start of the week, and now we have a Monday Night Raw taping and a SmackDown event to look forward to, with your new fancy smanchy partner in Netflix. You signed with Netflix. Do you understand how combustible that company has been with their TV partners in the past? Oh, this is going to go about as well as a honeymoon to North Sentinel Island, I would assume. Anyway, folks. So, let's see here. Let's take a look. Well, let's see. What could we start out with? Oh, I know. Let's see here. So, see, WWE Shop, every WrestleMania season, or Maniac Week, as I like to call it, does this thing where they do the Hall of Fame merchandise. And it's usually just some tacky t-shirts that you can usually get off 75% clearance, or, some little doodads here and there, like a poster, or even a championship belt. Triple H, a 2025 WWE Hall of Fame inductee, decided to not go with one belt, not two belts, not three belts. No. Oh, no. Hunter is too grand and glorious. He thinks of himself like a Stone Cold Steve Austin or the Hoagie Man. He's decided that he should have 4 belts. And now I am going to talk about the hysterical advertisement that I got in my WWE Shop email this past week, which has been the genesis of this wonderful show ending up reviving itself for the first time in 2.5 years. Now, because of the nature of these advertisements, I decided that I'm going to read from them here. They're not going to be shown on screen. Anyway, let me just adjust my headset here and go... Triple H Championship Titles 30th Anniversary Edition. For 30 years, there has been one consistent, one superstar who's played the game to become the game to change the game. Celebrate 3 decades of Triple H with these one-of-a-kind limited edition championship title belts, which, by the way, are $850 if you want to invest in these belts and get banned from every single second and third world country for having terrible fashion sense, and ending up on every government police agency from a second and third world countries list. Let's start with the first title, the D-Generation X Attitude Era title. A gaudy-looking thing that is shamrock green with a cross on it that has this weird sound pattern on the front. Here's how the Fanatics crew described this title, because Fanatics is now doing their merch. I expect this is going to go about as well as their baseball deal did, which was poorly. Let us begin.
Celebrate 30 years of Triple H with this Attitude Era Championship title belt, inspired by his first WWE title win in 1999, styled after his iconic gear and featuring sledgehammers.
Well, of course there'll be sledgehammers.
Green rhinestones, a Triple H logo stamp, and 30 years of Triple H end caps. It honors his legendary legacy, a must-have for any WWE collection.
I'm sure it's also a must-have for anybody who wants horrible cursed objects in their house, like, the hand of Herb Abrams or the cursed Antonio Inoki scarf. So yeah, Tony, go order yourself one. Yeah, that would be perfect. You can use it against all the pro WWE stands that don't like AEW. You can use it like one of those holy relics for The Exorcist. So let's start off with our second one, which is, the 30th Anniversary Evolution World Heavyweight title. The Cerebral Assassin, they're calling it.
Honor 3 decades of dominance with the Triple H 30 Years Evolution World Heavyweight Championship title belt, inspired by his iconic 2002 return and legendary title reign. It features a denim-textured strap with red Triple H logo, 22 red rhinestones,
the 22 interns that have obviously been sacrificed for this belt.
And details like the Evolution logo, 30 years of Triple H end cap, and his signature catchphrase, a fitting showcase of the game's lasting legacy.
His catchphrase? What is it, the time to play the game? You're paying $850 for a belt that looks like it was welded on top of a 1%er biker gang's sign, equipped with rhinestones that look like that they are soul gems, weird wrestling suplex things, and it's glowing red. I'm pretty sure every devil-worshipping club in the greater Vegas area and in the United States is probably not going to accept you being in their club if they see this gaudy thing around your waist. Because Satan worshippers have standards. As we will soon see, a lot of different groups have standards. So now we'll continue with the Authority. So, Hunter, you're reminding people of the Authority angle, which, by the by, I went through. That was one of the most inconsistent angles imaginable. It was really weird. You were kissing Stephanie while drowning a deranged lawn gnome in a bucket of water. That kind of weird. So, here's what this one says.
Mark 30 years of Triple H's legendary career with this Authority-themed WWE Championship title belt, inspired by his final reign in 2016, featuring black and red colors from his iconic gear.
Okay, red has never been something that he's worn a lot of, so that's a bit of an oxymoron there, guys.
The belt includes a commemorative strap with the dazzling rhinestones.
Ooh, more soul gems from the interns.
Bow down to the king etched across it.
I'm pretty certain that would get you banned at every Medieval Times location if you wore this thing, but go ahead.
The Authority logo on the left and Skull King logo on the right, a striking tribute to his legacy as a 14-time world champion.
Yeah, the Authority angle did not go well. It was an angle that was received at mixed. But if Hunter wants to continue his little delusional fantasy here, who am I to say against the great dictator, So then we finally have the belt that is the most weird looking. Well, of all four of them are very weird looking, but this one's the most generic looking. It will probably end up getting you banned from every rock mosh concert imaginable, but it is called the King of Kings. And we continue with
celebrate the King of Kings with the Triple H 30 years, the King Legacy WWE Championship title belt.
Okay, I'm assuming that by now the person doing these arguments has now had at least 3 different brain aneurysms, because that statement really just doesn't gel very well.
Featuring custom side plate, 30 Maltese crosses
for when you want to exercise a demon or terrorize an AEW fan.
Signature sledgehammers
for when you want to do a proper burial.
And the Skull King logo. It captures the essence of his legendary career.
It doesn't say the words nepotism on the front of it, so that doesn't make much sense. Or I married the boss's daughter, or I was the only one of this crew from the Attitude Era who, had functioning brain cells left and wasn't under 11 billion different substances, or had beef with Satan Vince, so, I guess I was probably just the last person who drew the straw.
With the WWE Hall of Fame logo on one end cap and 30 years of Triple H on the other, this bold title honors a 14-time world champion and a 2025 Hall of Fame inductee.
Really? You couldn't unretire yourself and made yourself a 17-time world champion? I mean, at least outdoing Ric Flair, your mentor? Huh. How, although admittedly, Hunter did have some injury issues during his career. Then there was also the heart condition, which forced him out of the ring. But still, he could have at least had 4 different 24/7 runs, which would have classified him as a world champion. But let's applaud the modesty and the humbleness of our dear King of Kings for only having 4 title belts. 4 gaudy-looking $850 title belts that would get you banned in every party at every third world and second world country from Macedonia to Sri Lanka. And let's see here. So, and it isn't just gaudy title belts that our dear great dictator has decided in his infinite wisdom to push. Oh, let's see here. He's decided to go on the public media tour and decided to open mouth, insert foot, and put it into a pretzel hold. To quote from the Peter Rosenberg show,
"This will sound offensive. I wish I could tell people to F off being a critic. Be a fan. Go watch this and be a fan. If I tell you, go to the movies and watch this movie, I saw it. It's really good. And if you just go to the movies as a fan, you watch the movie, you have one opinion. If I tell you, hey, go see this movie, but can you give me a 1-page detail, what you like, what you didn't like, and if it worked for you or if it didn't work for you, you watched it totally differently. You watched the product totally differently. It ruins it for people."
Okay, first problem with this statement. You are comparing theatrical films, which, mind you, are made and distributed at a movie theater, to live sports entertainment and sporting events, which are 2 completely different industries altogether. How much delusionanium has Mark Shapiro been feeding you in your coffee, Hunter, to not know that difference?
The world was, to continue, the world was so much better when nobody knew and you just watched it.
Everybody knew that pro wrestling was scripted, Hunter. They knew it back in 1941 when Sports and Games by Harold Keefe was published. the famous journalist over at Oklahoma University who did all that Civil War research. He did a book called Sports and Games, and he talked about professional wrestling, and he blurred the lines. He knew it was scripted, but the reason that he was pushing it so hard was because there were star athletes like Danny Hodge who couldn't do football full time and needed a gig to make money. And there was no better gig for somebody who has an ACL that's missing a few muscles than getting into pro wrestling and working in front of a crowd. And you can siphon off the boxing cards. You can do boxer versus wrestler matches. You can do all that kind of stuff. But for Oklahoman prospects, that was a way for them to get into the door when their athletic careers took a sudden, dramatic end with an ACL injury or a broken bone. They did that. You know, you go out there and try to ruin the surprise, to continue. And I get it. It's their business. When the surprise is so obvious that it is literally a present made out of glass windows, it isn't a surprise anymore. It's the most obvious thing imaginable. And they tell you the beep that's going on. You just effing ruin it for people. The business that feeds you. The business has never fed me. The business has always approached me. Well, I get it. 9 times out of 10, most people who get into the pro wrestling industry are people who are absolutely desperate. This is something that for them is something they really need. They absolutely desire it. They are the weak-willed, the desperate, the absolutely terrified of everything around them. And this is the one cottage industry that will accept a B-plus player into this business. The business has never fed me because the business approached me. My TV remote died on a random episode of TNA Impact back in 2009, 2010, and I've been watching this wrestling product since that time period as somebody who has been constructively critical of the business, because I feel as though that for these people who were too big or not ugly enough to go into the drama club and be professional actors, some of whom, by the way, are trying to juggle their Hollywood responsibilities with this whole pro wrestling stuff, it's not feeding it for me. I'm just sitting here looking at this man literally drowning himself in hubris and going, oh, okay, cool. You're going completely full delusional greatest dictator. Now you're ruining it for people and lessening their enjoyment of it to a large degree because you're telling them it's all beep, right or wrong. It's going to happen. If you're a wrestling fan and you find my criticism of, say, for instance, Seth Rollins to be the most scorched earth take imaginable, that's fine, okay? You like Seth Rollins. I'm not taking away from the fact that you like the man who is the literal public relations disaster champion of WWE before a certain Pepsi-drinking savage decided to return. And oh, I'll get to you next time, Commodore Pepsi Pop-Off-a-Bitch, but I've currently got a bigger sledgehammer to fry. The biggest thing I see right now is the internet people thinking, oh, and then they're going to do this. Yeah, no, we're not. You know what I mean. Oh, and then The Rock's going to show up, and he's going to do this. He's going to have the greatest match in the sky all time. Well, except for his effing movie schedule, which doesn't prevent him from doing anything in this time frame. If you're really not upset about Dwayne's movie schedule messing up your grand, great ambitions for WrestleMania this year, seriously, talk it out with Dwayne, okay? You two have known each other for decades, okay? You want to revive WWE films so that Rocky can do at least a 5-picture deal where he can be a delusional star, the biggest hot air wingbag imaginable? But go ahead. You have a films division, last I checked. We'll give Mark Shapiro something to do in his bunker. Being all paranoid, listening to the walls with a stethoscope. Being paranoid about all those wrestling critics that talk negatively about the WWE. Oh, all that media training from the Dan Snyder School of going la 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 is going so well for you. And this is the guy you decided to listen to and take advice from. Look, I get it. Mark Shapiro is a total carny. He comes from Six Flags, and he nearly burned that chain to the ground. He did such a great job at burning chains. He then became the media director over the Washington football team. Okay? He learned from the greatest person who literally shuts his door and goes, la 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 la, Dan Snyder, about public relations. They literally made their own media division when people at the Washington Post continuously talked negatively about Shiner's ownership group. They literally pulled a Soviet-era power play move for a football team. I'm sure the East Germans, if the government still exists, would probably have sued them for gimmick infringement. Let's see here. So he did this interview at the Pete Rosenberg show, and this is something I'm going to say here. People really need to stop getting so upset about the shock jocks, okay? They're shock jocks. Anytime that one of these wrestling personalities or wrestlers comes on one of these shock jock shows, you should just sit back and go, not be a fan, just go and observe. Observe their behavior, observe their reactions, their facial expressions. Laugh hysterically as they are continuously digging a grave so deep that it bursts into the 7 levels of HE double hockey stick, and then they get promptly kicked out of the 7 levels because the 7 levels, guess what? They have standards. So he then does the whole movie rant thing on the Pat McAfee show, a man who is increasingly regretting his decision signing with this company, with the way that Michael Cole has been grinning at him in his general direction. So he responds with, if I tell you I saw a movie and I thought it was great and you should go see it, you should just go see it. If you're a fan, you go watch it. You like it. If you didn't, whatever. If I say go watch that movie, give me a report on it and tell me all the things that worked and all the things that didn't. You go watch that movie differently. I watch wrestling shows exactly the same. I watch from a critical perspective. I've worked as an auditor for 15 years. That's how my brain works, okay? Fans are going to view shows differently. Some people are going to view the shows because they like the whole classic work in a hold. Or they like it because there's a wild brawl going on. Or they like it because the flippy wrestlers are doing flippy things and doing something increasingly inane. Okay? People watch shows, wrestling shows, to see different things. What might be considered the main event at the end of the card might not be the main event for everybody in that arena. You know, that's my point. At some point, you love this. You love it more than anything, and you grew up watching it, and you're invested, and you went as a fan, and for some reason you got into being a critic, or someone asked you to be a critic, and now you're hypercritical. Says the guy who's consistently butchered Mid-South wrestling angles. Mid-Atlantic and Mid-South wrestling angles for the last 3 decades of his career. If you're such a study of the game, Hunter, why is it that you can't do a proper 4 Horsemen angle? Why is it that you have trouble doing mid-card feuds Mid-Atlantic style? What is your problem with building up heels? What is your problem with building up baby faces? What is your problem not properly pushing your women's division? What is the recent problem you had booking African-American talents on the main roster? It doesn't make sense. You're losing a market capital right there. Okay, look, I get it. You've had the alleged racism problems before. But you and Booker T seem to be going on the same wavelength of digging yourself as deep a hole as possible right now in the public relations department. Seth Rollins, Brock Lesnar, and CM Punk are looking at you with all the envy in the world. at that. To me, that ruins the experience for people. If people are taking what a critic is saying that personally, then simply back away, and just understand that there are some people who are going to look at this. They're going to look at a Johnny Gargano match and think, much to their heart's content, my goodness, I think a broom would do better than Johnny Gargano in this match. In fact, quote, my mother, the non-wrestling fan, saw Johnny Gargano's match with Andrade Cien Almas in NXT. And her quote was, and I'm not making this up at all, I've said this before previously on a podcast, quote, why is that nice Mexican man wrestling a broom? He looks so angry that he's having to do all the work. That was the reaction, and that was, I believe, a TakeOver Brooklyn match that he did. So, when we look at this from this perspective, I'm not ruining the experience for people. Okay, if I think Seth Rollins is a useless wrestler, that's my opinion about it. I'm not ruining the experience for all the Seth Rollins fans out there. Let's see. I don't want to go watch a movie or anything else and just criticize everything I see. I just want to go see if I enjoy the movie. Again, film and live events are two different mediums. The fact that you are comparing live films to sports entertainment events is causing every single movie critic to literally have an aneurysm right now. Sickle and Ebert are literally rising from their grave to haunt you for eternity for comparing you to pro wrestling, which is something they never particularly liked. Okay? You're thinking of this as high concept, high culture art? What is Nick Khan feeding you? Seriously, if Nick Khan thinks this is high concept, high art, then he is in the wrong house flipping business. Did the chaos involving Satan Vince cause Nick Khan to turn off his braid and suddenly go, yes, this burning house fire is fine. I'm primarily a guy who flips companies and increases their assets value like a person putting about a half a dozen hot air balloons in a giant office. And then I go leave when the inevitable Hindenburg happens. But my good friend Ari Emanuel of the Endeavor Talent Agency, and there's no better characters out there in the world than talent agents, especially Hollywood stunt talent agents, are the most highest of moral characters imaginable. They're perfect for the wrestling business. You might be noting that that is a sarcastic line, and I have really nothing against Ari Emanuel. He had himself a very bad situation where he had to get rid of these MMA Neanderthals from literally bankrupting his talent agency with all the reckless event moves that they did during the pandemic, and he figured that the only way was to basically have them be the literal gold diggers for a professional wrestling company. That company being WWE. Because they had $50 million of Saudi Arabia's greenest bucks in their bank account, and oh, the UFC was more than happy to cover all the costs for all the losses from their shows. And hey, we get to drag back CM Punk to give us back all the money he owes us for the Mike Jackson cards not selling out. He had that meltdown over at AEW after all. He owes us. You see what I mean? Let's see here. I don't put a lot of stock into what is on the internet unless it follows through to other things we do. They allow you to use the internet? That was their first mistake. Whichever PR person decided to let Hunter use the internet probably should get fired out of a cannon and into the sun for their new office building. Oh, by the way, the old office building is probably Why did you build the new office building under an ancient Indian burial ground, by the way? Because it seems like every single curse imaginable has happened ever since you left your old demonic offices building over in Sanford. I mean, I get it. I like the Andre statue. That's probably the only thing right now in your office building right now that isn't cursed at the moment. So let's see here. When Jey Uso won the Rumble, there were a lot of people who had their thoughts, opinions, and comments on that, which is all they are at the end of the day. There are 1,500 people 15,000 people in the venue, and it's been sold out all the time. I'm pretty certain that every single tech tickets guru is going to question you on that statement. 15,000 paid? That's 15-000 people paid for this event at the Rumble. I know wrestling events, and I know a lot of them get comped out because people can't afford to go to wrestling shows because of lack of disposable income. Because in case you haven't noticed, the economy has not been in a particularly good place lately. So you're claiming that the Royal Rumble, which, by the by, is now looking like a show that was extremely questionably booked, with your two winners, one winning in the opening match of night one, and the other nearly taking out a tooth of one of your top prospects from Minnesota. I would probably not be saying that publicly, but sold out all the time, eating and going absolutely crazy when he comes out. Who do we listen to? The few people or the larger crowd? You listen to both. Jey Uso has had a fairly solid, if incredibly inconsistent run as a singles performer. People wanted him to have a singles run. They wanted Jimmy to have a singles run to see how they would do. It kind of is like, okay, and also, a good job on throwing your talent under the bus there. See, you've just now put a ton of pressure on Jey Uso to be successful, a guy who has had multiple issues with driving while intoxicated. He has 5 DWIs, I believe. Now, admittedly, he hasn't had one recently, but you're putting a ton of pressure on a prospect in their late 30s who's going through their next to last run as a solo performer when you do this interview and you basically publicly essentially bury them. You know, you're saying that, oh, it's just a few people who are being critical of Jey Uso's run. But if the majority of the masses start being critical of Jey Uso's run, then you can say, you can flip the script and basically go, oh, Jay's not working out. We're going to put the shiny thing on Braun Breaker now. Or any of my other muscly prospects. I swear he is literally starting to fall into some of the same traps that Vince fell into. And don't get me wrong, Braun Breaker is an incredible talent. He's fantastic. But you're now putting a young prospect who has got a very, very high ceiling in a pressure situation where you were forcing them to take on a high-level shiny thing. I never really particularly like it when wrestlers end up with the shiny thing because that puts a lot of pressure on them. And in this industry where people are looking at instantaneous reactions, that's not necessarily a good thing half the time. So let's continue. We have a focus group every single night of a lot of people who are, in that moment, fans. Okay, once again, you're making assumptions as to what people are doing. Hunter, you actually have been progressive for once in hiring the most despicable, evil creatures imaginable. You have an influencer on your roster. And not just any influencer, a video influencer. Influencers do not come to events. I mean, have you not dissected the Paul creature in your scientific lab? Are your technicians that terrified of going into the Ohio boy's mind? Because, let me tell you, Influencers do not go to shows to be wrestling fans. They go to shows because it is a status symbol. It is something for their brand. And as a man who loves that brand, oh, you should know more than anybody about brand synergy. It's something that Barrios has been talking about all the time to you in the office, while you've been listening to Motorhead CDs in your earphones for 27 hours. And not listening to anybody around you. And being the worst public relations officer I've ever seen WWE have in their roster. Someone who makes Satan Vince look competent, because for all of Vincent Kennedy McMahon, Satan himself's incredible list of evils, which I will also say, what took you so long, Satan? Were you letting all these youngsters, these technocrats, these hipster technocrats out-evil you? My goodness, you've been slow. You're not going to let the likes of the late Richard Nixon outdo you now, are you? Here we go. And not being critics, not being anything else. And see also the point I just made about the influencers. They are there with their smartphones and their selfie sticks. They are there posing in front of a wrestling ring. They are looking to get on camera to increase their brand recognition, their brand name, and you have sponsorship deals with some of these people. Or, in the case of poor old AJ Styles, had to work a WrestleMania match with one of those creatures. I'm sure he would be rather wrestling against Cheetix from TNA back in 2003 than, of course, dealing with the Paul creature. Let's see here. To continue the quote, people are allowed to love what they love and dislike what they dislike. Okay, once again, contradictory statement. And their opinions are their opinions. But you cannot base things on the opinion of some when the majority feel differently. You're using political jargon with wrestling fans. A group of people that will go from 0 to 10,000 in less than 5 seconds if their favorite wrestler doesn't win the shiny thing or the title. The type of fan that will normally have and let's put it as kindly as possible, they will usually have a cult shrine, usually made out of bubble gum with their favorite wrestlers' pictures around them. Some of them quite scantily clad, and if they're female wrestlers, oh good lord. Oh good lord. It makes your average resident of Las Vegas look over and go, honey, I'm gonna need to go get the crosses and the holy water. Probably pretty soon. Timmy has made a cult basement for Mercedes Moné. So, feels differently. When the majority start to feel it, that's when you got to listen. When the moderate fans start to be interested in your product, that's when you start listening. The majority fans get swayed so many times in different directions, it's like looking at a pendulum swinging back and forth, over and over again. It's hypnotic. So you're basically thinking that wrestling fans are essentially should be Alex DeLarge from A Clockwork Orange, tied to a movie theater chair and forced to watch a product that is incredibly inconsistent most of the time, and expecting them to like this? Wow, you are really doing great on your great dictator art there, Hunter. I'm really proud of you. Oh, that's just so great. That's so wonderful. Here, have a golf clap. So, let's see here. Then he goes on the Aaron Schultz show. Apparently, he did not learn his lesson about the influencers and has decided to bring a shock jock comedian into the fray. I assume probably for soul harvesting, but again, I'm trying to give WWE this gigantic, mega, ultra gigantic wrestling company the benefit of the doubt here that they're not going to harvest the soul of a comedian, of a shock jock comedian that makes ill-timed jokes about Puerto Ricans. He said this:
"Here's the beautiful thing about our world. The internet is not real life."
The internet is a portal into the real world, but okay.
"And the beeping and the effing complaining that is on there is not real life."
Okay.
"You could read the internet and it will sound like this thing is dead." I'll use Cody as an example.
Oh, look, burying another talent, and one that just lost the shiny thing to the most invisible wrestler and a part-time rubber chicken that he got his win back from.
"Cody already jumped the shark. He's dead as a babyface."
Cody's run was running out of steam, and he was starting to get heel reactions going against the likes of Kevin Owens, who was really trying hard to be the best heel imaginable, and look what happened. His neck gave out. He's on the shelf for at least the next year. Side note, get well soon, Kevin Owens. You're one of my favorite wrestlers on this roster. It's a shame that your body gave out when you did. I'm glad he had that match with the ever-likable Sami Zayn. And had that match up in Canada, because at least it's a fitting send-off for him if he's going to be out long-term. He said, and he continues,
"Really, I don't know. I'm in an arena with 10 to 15,000 people every night going ape-beep for me, selling the most merchandise. But sure, whatever you want to say on the internet, that's the golden rule."
Did he? Okay, golden rule. Okay, if there's any establishment to have golden rules in front of them, make sure that Hunter reads the handwriting properly, because if he's being this delusional, then I would assume that he basically thinks that if he goes to a McDonald's, he's dumping all the fries on the floor, causing all the drink machines to go on, and all the Big Macs to float in the air menacingly. This is real delusional.
"The beautiful thing for our business, unlike a movie or TV show or even a book, we have a focus group every night, and we begin to tell these stories. This is working, this is not working, and whether people are beeping online or the reaction people live is what you can trust, right?"
I'm going to give another example here. Say, for example, you're booking a wrestling card and you decide to go to a foreign country. Let's see here, Toronto, Canada. Oh, that's a perfect one. So, and you're booking a show, and you have a bunch of Canadian wrestlers on there. And these Canadian wrestlers happen to be heels in the American territory. What do you think is going to possibly happen when you book those wrestlers in Canada? You have the Bizarro World incident. Now try booking that logic of booking these same wrestlers. You're going,
"Oh, well, we have to turn a babyface now,"
only to go back to America and they're immediately booed as heels. That's what happened in 2002. You not remember that? You were on the card. You were around for that period. I mean, do you not think that Canadian wrestlers don't exist? That luchadors don't exist? No. Yeah, I see we have in our chat here. Oh yeah, I'm sure you don't have anything like that in your home, old man. You're not a Mercedes Moné stan. But yeah, let's see here. But okay, so we're looking at this internet. That's the golden rule. The beautiful thing about our business. And now you're comparing it to books. Books are structured novels that are put together that have a beginning, a middle, and an end. Pro wrestling is a consistent pendulum, is a consistent perpetual motion clock where you have a feud beginning, a feud in the middle, some extra pieces added on as garnish, the ending that you think is going to happen, but in reality, the person that goes over inevitably snaps their ACL like a twig, so that the heel that ended up losing that night is now going to have to be pushed again. And you continue your cycle of perpetual motion over and over and over again. It's like you're stuck on a TV screen watching a Miz feud time and time and time again. And watching as he misses the dives for every single luchadors, which means you are forced to put one of your mid-card wrestlers under a mask and hope to cheese that you can get people who can catch dives for your new lucha investments, which we will talk about in a little bit here. You're comparing books and, TV shows? You want to talk about TV shows? TV shows are scripted. They're scripted mini-movies. And they're scripted mini-movies where each season is different. It is closer to what wrestling is to an extent, but still, it's not live. It's not a live sporting event. It's not a taped sporting event. You're forgetting the sport element of sports entertainment when you compare it to a film, which is a thing that takes almost 6 months to 2 years to complete, if you're lucky, and if you don't run into Apocalypse Now levels of troubled production. You are doing this, and it's like, what? Again, like I said, if you're comparing it to movies, well, every film critic has now just had an aneurysm because the wrestling people think that they're hot stuff. They think that they're in the movie-making business. Oh. Why don't you go ask Orion Pictures how that went for them? Spoiler, it didn't go particularly well. And we'll finish off this quote here from the, let's see here. The beautiful thing for our business. Let's see, we did that. And then he continues by burying Jey Uso. He says, Jey Uso's terrible. It's never going to. What are they doing? They're eating the dude again. Merch. The reaction in the crowd. Everything he does. Yeah, it's just the opinion of a few people. Like I said, Jey Uso is an incredibly inconsistent performer. 1 minute, he's basically Nick Bonino and is scoring every playoff goal imaginable. The next, he disappears like a map. You have that same problem in NXT. His name is Ethan Page. Why exactly did you decide to sign him again? You had at least 5 or 6 other veteran prospects that you could have used. And I like Ethan. I like him as a wrestler, but if he's not going onto the main roster yet, why do you have him in NXT? I mean, he can catch dives, so he's the perfect Miz replacement. And the old man doesn't have to gouge his eyeballs out having to watch a Miz versus Luchador match. And the deep-seated fear has now hit the old man, obviously. Miz versus Pentagon Jr. Yes, you could probably tell that Hunter has awakened me from my 2 years slumber. So we have the, and if you're watching on the YouTube stream here, let's talk about something else that happened recently. Michael Cole, in his best Oliver North gear imaginable, seriously, it's a bad sign. The universal rule of WWE, if Michael Cole is happy and cheerful and smiling, you should probably be running for the border. Because the man is literally gone, oh, isn't it wonderful that everything is fire and brimstone and we have 11 billion lawsuits? Isn't it wonderful, Pat, that all of this is happening around us? It's so beautiful. I feel like I'm in a Yugoslav war zone. Vintage. Cole. As Pat stares there, wondering if he is going to become a sacrifice to Michael Cole. I mean, people are already calling it up for his heads already, and Corey Graves has been shot out of a cannon into NXT, which he has been griping about recently. I assume he's probably going to end up in AEW soon. So, while the West Virginian punter does the West Virginia punter things, and also, let's note, he's a former Indianapolis Colts player. So, I assume that McAfee thought that, WWE, that nothing was going to be as crazy as the Colts and the owner, Jim Irsay. We're talking about the football owners, aren't we? Well, I assume that he's been in this company long enough and, oh, by the way, gotten the tar beat out of him by Satan himself at WrestleMania one year. So, and I'm certain that WWE is a little annoyed at his sports commitments at this point, especially given how frayed their relationship is with ESPN right now, and how frayed their relationship is with USA Network, and how frayed their relationship is with Fox, who is probably going to sabotage them at some point with some diabolical evil move. You know, it would be really good? Putting AEW on a mainstream network, Fox. If you really want revenge on them for tanking your ratings, well, there's a way to do it. So yes, while Michael Cole sings in the hills are alive with the smell of napalm, mortars striking upon thee. Our company is in so much trouble, it's making me so happy. Vintage dress essential dread. So anyway, here's some more essential and eternal dread to think about. Apparently, Hunter's decided that his grand national expansion while the economy is in bad shape is a really good idea again. But instead of deciding to set roots in the United Kingdom, where those peasants live, or in Japan, we would probably laugh him out of the building at some point, and in his attempted acquisition of Noah, which is going to cause every Zuffa-era UFC executive to have a legit medical aneurysm. No, he has decided to go for the spiciest of spiciest offers, and this image right here is going to showcase what's going on. So, old man, if you're drinking anything currently on the broadcast, it is going to show up here in a second on the screen here. Let's see. I'll just let that play. There we go. Okay, so Triple H has done two particularly questionable moves at this point. The first questionable move is he has decided to get into a working relationship with the original daughter party of professional wrestling, TNA. A promotion that up until last year was doing fairly well and being incredibly competent and making me incredibly disturbed. He is in a working relationship with TNA. And, oh, by the way, TNA is now doing TNA things. They did a massive Perch-style thing on their executive branch, catapulted Scott D'Amore and several other people out of their company. It's now being run by a guy who looks like Tony Montana Jr. from Scarface. And, oh, by the way, they decided to re-sign the Blanchard Creature feature. Yes, that's Blanchard Creature feature from her CMLL deal, and she's back in the company. Right around the time that you got a working agreement with them. Half of the TNA roster has bolted for either AEW or the NWA, and the other half that is sticking around is going, this is weird. You know, people like the Motor City Machine Guns, who wanted a WWE run and are obviously the kind of performers who WWE would like. A Legends Act, they're in their early 40s, they've had cumulative issues, injuries, and stuff like that. But as you can see from the image right here, Hunter found a new desirable lust. Tonight, on All My Donner Parties, Triple H is engaged in a gloriously sultry affair with the likes of Total Nonstop Action, but he has found a new love, a new capable love who loves burials just as much as he does. Triple A Lucha Libre Worldwide. And for those of you unaware of what AAA is, they are the second biggest promotion in Mexico. They, behind CMLL, oftentimes are competing with them for the adoration and desires of the fan base. They were founded by Antonio Pena back in the 80s, who was the former head booker of EMLL/CMLL, who decided to go in a non-traditionalist approach to Lucha Libre. So when Hunter is saying the words, "Oh, by the way, we've invested into a traditional Lucha Libre promotion," he apparently doesn't understand what Lucha Libre actually is when he says that. AAA, since Pena's passing in 2017, had been looking for a buyer. And before the pundits in wrestling start saying, "Oh, well, the wrestling media was caught sleeping on this one. They didn't know about this whole thing." Let me remind you the golden... Well, Hunter seems to be forgetting about golden rules. Let's talk about the golden rule of Lucha Libre. Never believe a single thing that the luchadors are saying to you until it is put into writing, signed into contract with blood ink from a demon, because every time that they say something to you at a press conference, don't buy it about 75% of the time. And I'm being very, very light on that estimate. Oftentimes it's more like 95%. AAA, since 2018, with Antonio Pena's passing, and Darian Rodan and, of course, Mrs. Pena, have been looking for a buyer. Nobody thought that anybody was going to be stupid enough. And what level of stupid we're talking here is Ryback levels of stupid to buy into a Lucha Libre promotion. Yep. Guess who decided to acquire AAA at a press conference and did it in a public event during the day 2 of WrestleMania? It was the most humorous scene imaginable. You have all these intimidating luchadors standing around him, trying to stay in character, because you can clearly see on their faces, they're going, "I can't believe we got him to do this." All these heel luchadors are trying to stay in character, and they are literally trying to not corpse on camera. Including Andrade, who has the biggest pair of sunglasses I've ever seen imaginable. And then you have the obvious orchestrator of this deal. The guy who once kicked Vince McMahon's door down to get Cody Rhodes his first WrestleMania match. That would be, of course, the diabolical evil himself, Rey Mysterio. Rey is sitting over on the other end of the table, and he is smiling. He's trying to be as stoic as possible. But in reality, he's like, "Hey, Hunter, I know a great Lucha Libre promotion that we can acquire. It'd be great." And obviously, AAA has had monetary issues. They do not rely on real estate like CMLL does. CMLL has other sources of income that they can rely on. AAA was exclusively a wrestling promotion. They didn't have any other side investments or tangents, and they lost their TV partners. Their TV partners broke away from them. So now suddenly you're having difficulties filling out those sponsorship vacancies. It's much like the situation with WXW, where they were primarily reliant on sponsorships. And that's the thing that got them in the end, was that. Yes, Triple H was had by them all. That is the most accurate statement that could be made. It's like he thinks he's going 21 on blackjack every single time, when in reality the cards are when in actuality he's going 27. He's the guy who thinks he's won lucky sevens on slot machines, when in actuality he's gone bust. I mean, I have been sitting here for the last several days going, he bought a Lucha Libre promotion. I can't believe he brought a Lucha Libre promotion. Now, starting up a Lucha Libre promotion is not a bad idea. Expanding into an international territory is not a bad idea. I mean, they used to do it in Memphis all the time, and that's a second world country in and of itself. I mean, they had wrestling. They had expanded territories in foreign countries before. Like I said, Memphis. I just wonder aloud to myself. Okay, why didn't you just eat the startup cost and start your own NXT Mexico down there. It could just be a small offshoot promotion. You could build it up over the few years. You could acquire AAA a year or two later. You could do like interpromotional feuds and stuff like that. Instead, you're acquiring AAA outright with their massive baggage and their incredibly questionable roster at this point. Guys who are going to be very likely bolting like Psycho Clown. I mean, if you're CMLL, you are licking your lips going, ooh, we are going to have a full Big Top Circus here, eh? I mean, Psycho Clown was not a part of the press conference. It's likely he's bolting. They only have performers on pay-per-appearances. You know, I don't get this move. I get that Nick is looking for flash and panache, but the only thing that's going to happen is that a fireworks factory is going to go off, and you're going to be eating loss after loss after loss when the Mexican Lucha Libre crowd goes, hold on a second, that's not Lucha Libre. This is the same mess that we've been dealing with for the last 15 years from this promotion. Doing very Americanized, very heavy American-style angles instead of traditional Lucha Libre, which Hunter seems to think AAA does. They do very gimmick-heavy matches, mostly very bloody, mask versus mask, hair versus mask matches. So I get it that you're now working with Netflix, and Netflix is a lot more flexible about the, the blood and the violence stuff. But at the same time, just because you put it south of the border does not mean you're going to escape the criticism of the American censor bureaus who are going to go, oh, if you're going to simulcast this on another network, say a cable network, for instance, you're going to have to grayscale the screen here. And while I certainly think that anybody who absolutely loves the blood and guts style matches is going to probably be happy, at the same time, it's AAA, the most combustible promotion imaginable. A promotion that has taken every golden, unique opportunity that they have ever had and proceeded to flambe it out the window. Again, if this was CMLL, who you guys have worked with before, and I get it, you worked with AAA back in 1997. This is not AAA from 1997, Hunter. This is AAA from 2025, a promotion that has been on death's door for at least the last 3 years post-pandemic. This is not the same thing. You're buying a brand name that is full of bullet holes, and you are now tasked with the incredible task of trying to stop the bleeding of a promotion. You're not buying a promotion in its prime or a promotion that is starting to decline, that is starting to undergo its natural decline. Like, say, for instance, all those British wrestling promotions that you decided to invest into, like the big-nosed goober that you are. You decided to invest in British wrestling at a time when every punter in that place was going out of their fish and chips induced food poisoning coma and realizing, oh, all that money I laundered for the music industry during the Spice Girls boom of the 90s is really running out here. I'm taking loss after loss here, governor. Oh, look, there's someone who's going to buy these British wrestling promotions, much like Ford and BMW bought British Leyland. Oh, what? And he's a colonial Yank who has no idea what he's doing? Oh, well, that's absolutely splendid now. Let's do some cheers with some tea and gin. Okay. The British wrestling industry was artificially inflated by whatever British mobsters were investing into British wrestling because they decided to have a nostalgic throwback for 1987 World of Sports. They had a crush for wanting to relive the Giant Haystack's Big Daddy days, and they also wanted the technical wrestlers to do the Ode to Jim Breaks stuff, so they started investing heavily in British wrestling around the mid-2000s. That's why the British scene boomed as it did, but it was an artificial boom. They didn't get the... You talk about the people, Hunter. They didn't get the people behind them. It was counterculture people that got interested in that product. That was the people who went to British wrestling shows. If you're talking about the general British audience, they still think that British wrestling is Davey Boy Smith or Big Daddy or Giant Haystacks. And none of the current British wrestlers really represent that for the most part. You've had the internally indevelopmental Tyler Bates and Pete Dunne, who seems to go through gimmicks like he goes through pants. And I like Dunne, and I like Bates. But at the same time, there's not really a cognitive focus to actually make this work. You're not making a new Davy Boy, for instance. A man of the people, in spite of the fact he spent most of his career in Canada. You know, that kind of WWF-level superstar. So it doesn't make a lot of sense as to, you know, and I get it. You guys have had a lot of problems booking lucha guys over the years. But now you have two really motivated ones in Penta and Rey Fenix. And you better be praying on all your digits now, Hunter, that Rey doesn't get himself injured again. Okay, because Fenix has had a tendency for broken arms in recent years. Rey Mysterio is now dealing with a pulled groin injury as confirmed by multiple wrestling sources. So now he's stuck in limbo. And now you are in a situation where your top lucha guys are Penta, Fenix, Dragon Lee, who's still kind of stuck in developmental at this point, for whatever reason. And then, of course, the surprise sensation of all of this, Dominic Mysterio, who, if you're wondering, yes, I absolutely love Dominic's performance in WWE. He is a performer who has benefited from being on the main roster instead of being in the indies or the second-tier promotions, because this is a guy who understands the business so well that he's like, this babyface character of mine isn't working. I'm going to go betray my dad and go behave like Eddie Guerrero. The man has gotten thermonuclear heat reactions since he turned heel, and now the payoff of that, a natural payoff. He's now suddenly babyface. So let's hope you don't do the classic Vince Swerve booking and have Dominic, turn heel again. He's got a great first, revenge opponent in Finny McBrogue, an experienced veteran hand who sure has physically declined significantly. But if he's going out of the company and doing maybe one last run in New Japan, which you seem to be interested in for some reason, there's Noah and there's New Japan, but I'm not sure you're acquiring either company, least unless you want your Zuffa-era UFC executives to, like I said earlier, have a horrible aneurysm. Yeah. I mean, the AAA acquisition was good in terms of the naming rights. They bought the company that owns the naming rights for Pentagon and Fenix, so they now don't have to worry about the trademark issues anymore. They wouldn't have really had to worry about the trademark issues in the first place because this is WWE. It's the biggest game in town. Even AAA, for their insanity at times, isn't going to mess around with this big promotion when they want their Mexican stars to say, oh, by the way, I previously had a WrestleMania appearance. Sure, I got beaten in under 3 minutes, but it's a WrestleMania appearance is still a WrestleMania appearance. So, yeah. And then you have... So, yes. In this week, alongside, of course, the other major issue that happened Mania week, which was WWE this year has decided that they want to copy college football's playbook, because copying the playbook of a football organization worked out so well for you the last time that you did that. Visions of the XFL dance in our heads. Both times you guys attempted to get into football with the college name, image, and likeness programs. Now, obviously, name, image, likeness programs are a positive. It allows student athletes to actually, see something called monetary compensation for their efforts.
breaking the NCAA racket that had been going on since at least the 1930s, which was a way to stem wages because the Great Depression was a thing. But the Great Depression hasn't been a thing for a while, even with the American economy having its issues these days. So WWE decides to do the WWE ID system. And now facilities all across the United States have a nice big nuclear reactor hazard sign on the front of them that says, "We are affiliated officially with WWE now." And while for certain academies, like the Black and Brave Wrestling Academy, owned by Seth Rollins, them having hazard lights in front of their building is obviously a wonderful positive sign, there are still issues. Guys, you are currently embroiled in a multitude of massive legal issues right now. Why are you adding even more to your already stressed out legal team if one of these schools has an issue? For example, in that situation, the Nightmare Factory has one of their trainers have a DV issue. That person was released from the company, but at the same time, that legal issue is still hanging over, and since you are now affiliated with Nightmare Factory, the legal responsibility ends up falling on you. And now you have a situation where you decide to unveil this ID system and have this tournament for a ID champion, and you decide to have it, of all places, in Vegas. Vegas. You're trusting young, prospective wrestlers to be on their best behavior in the city of sin and depravery. I think that might be a bit much of an ask for the pro wrestling creatures. The fact of the matter is that those pyramid casinos haven't been turned upside down yet is actually a modern miracle in and of itself. You're asking wrestlers who are stuck for a week and a half in Las Vegas to behave themselves so you can have an ID tournament to crown your figurative independent development champion, and hoping that something doesn't break loose. Because this is not the what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas era. No. That internet thing that you don't like so much, Hunter, that's a very real thing. You know, you have those fans that come in with their selfie sticks and their phones. Oh, they are posting all sorts of stuff online. So, I don't know what magic beans Mark Shapiro's been feeding you, Hunter, but that's a very real problem for you. That's gonna be a really real problem. And while I'm certain that the residents of Vegas, are absolutely horrified about being upstanding, legally minded individuals with all the common sense in the world right now, still, you have wrestlers in Vegas for a week and a half. It is as if 11 billion Kevin Nash clones were unleashed out of a cloning facility, and all of them decided to go to Vegas at the exact same time. Yeah. That's a recipe for disaster. The fact that it hasn't been as big a disaster as it normally is during these Maniac Week indie show runs is mostly due to the fact that the indie promoters are currently bickering at one another like desperate housewives and absolutely dramaing the current drama champion, although obviously Hunter took offense to that and decided to absolutely mess up every single public relations interview that he has currently done, as I have talked about extensively on here. Old man, you've been to Vegas before, haven't you? The temptation to go completely Dennis Rodman in Las Vegas is so strong, and you aren't a wrestler. You have at least standards. These are pro wrestlers who are despondent and depressed about the changes of the pro wrestling industry. They have been in dread and despair mode all week. Of course they are going to indulge in every vice imaginable. Why do you think that the Vegas Department of Legal Affairs currently has every zombie, succubus, incubus, Knights Templar performer at the medieval times fairs, sleep paralysis demon, active bonfires of Motorhead CDs at every house of ill repute that has currently banned them? Imaginable, who are suing for either gimmick infringement, injury insurance, and everything else under the sun, because they've had to deal with these unimaginable Rybackan horrors for at least the last week and a half. By the time that night 2 of WrestleMania hit, every single fan who was, a regular Vegas citizen who was going to the casino tables that week is so done with these wrestling people being in their city. They're looking at their watches going, how many days, hours, minutes, and seconds are they going to still be here before we can kick them out so that we can actually, get back to normal? And it happens around the same time as, it happens exactly as the same time at the NHL playoffs. So they're looking at this going, I could be watching a Vegas Golden Knights home hockey game right now instead of this wrestling stuff. Of course you didn't succumb to the Dennis Rodman temptations, Phil. You have standards. And so does every zombie, succubus, incubus, Knights Templar, werewolf, and any other creature of the night from this land of sin and depravity that is Las Vegas, Nevada. They have standards. And they're stuck dealing with these wrestling people. I mean, this is like, this WrestleMania, I was saying to my friends 2 months ago, I said to them, quote, this is going to be a show on par with Victory in Vegas, which was one of UFC's worst received shows, and WrestleMania 9. Speaking of which, and that's a good segment here, I've been going for about an hour and 21 minutes here. I did not think that Hunter was going to get me all jazzed up about his great dictator levels of hubris and me poking holes at every single sentence and every single comment that he made out of those free public media appearances for Pete Rosenberg, Pat McAfee, and some comedian named Aaron Schultz, who's apparently not liked in Puerto Rico. So yeah, I've definitely been dusting off the ring rust here. I obviously am going to talk about WrestleMania in more detail on next time around. So folks, thank you so much for tuning in to episode 77, Sledgehammers and Loathing in Vegas. Oh yeah, just to mess you up here, how do you like the name of Yokozuna Hoshoryu? Oh yeah, the sumo stuff. Yeah, I'm gonna probably be doing the sumo stuff at some point. Like I said, my schedule is a little up in the air right now because I still have my summer schedule left to plan. I was gonna save this for the next broadcast, but a little spoiler, I haven't exactly been inactive from the YouTube world for the last 2 seasons. While I haven't certainly done any wrestling content, I have gone to a much darker world. The world of popcorn, peanuts, and Cracker Jacks. Yep, baseball. Basically, AAA, AA, single A baseball. I have been in the video department for the Jamestown Tarp Skunks of the Perfect Game Collegiate Baseball League for the last 2 seasons. If you go onto the Jamestown Tarp Skunks YouTube channel, you will find my work. I worked behind the camera. I worked in the video department with Mr. Tomasini of the Chautauqua Sports Hall of Fame and Mr. Anderson of the Chautauqua Sports Hall of Fame, which I have been volunteering since Halloween of 2022. I was going to make that official announcement on the next episode, which will probably be in a few days to a week, given my schedule. Like I said, this is a very spur of the moment. Oh no! Oh no. Okay. Congratulations on that. Oh, you've been to a ballpark before. Like I said, going to Russell H. Dietrich Jr. Park is an experience. It is a place that will test your mind, it will test your spirit. It is an adversity-filled ballpark, and I absolutely love it for that. It has been such a fun experience to get my mojo back, and clearly it had an obvious effect here because I've been talking for an hour plus with very little to no breaks and little to drink. Let me see here. Yep. Oh, you're a Cubs. Oh, yeah, I remember you're a Cubs fan. Yeah, I have a general manager who's a New York Mets fan. Yeah. Most of the other guys are Yankees fans. So it has definitely been a very interesting and incredibly fun experience. And, well, yeah, you lived in Chi-Town. You've seen Dick the Bruiser wrestle. So, yeah. So, this is the most unexpected surprise of unexpected surprises that because Hunter decided to tempt the Hubris Fairy, someone has decided to rise from their grave for the first time in 2.5 years to do a show basically being constructive about what you're saying, what you're doing, and which people you should probably not be listening to, which is probably Mark Shapiro, because he seems to be trying to drive you off a cliff at this point there, Hunter. And look, I get it. You had a near-death experience with your heart a couple years ago. You've had to deal with this whole Satan Vince situation with the legal lawsuit and the Grant case, okay? I get that. Diving yourself deeper and trying to basically be something that you aren't has not gotten you very far. Being hypercritical of media people who are asking you a simple question is something you shouldn't be doing. It is only going to make you look more vulnerable and weak. If you're doing things like saying, I feel fantastic, I feel fine. This was at the 2023 Royal Rumble press conference, right when the Vince case was hitting molten hot reactions. He is acting like the most delusional person alive. He's just literally not believing anything that's happening around him. And then he does the same thing. What was it? 2024, 2025 Royal Rumble. He does exactly the same thing in the 2024 Royal Rumble. Yeah. Oh, no. As much as people don't like Kevin Dunn at least keeps to himself and is in his own little world. He is not making public delusional statements at wrestling press conference events, trying to make it feel like a big fight boxing MMA fight. Where, I don't know why he seems to think that copying Dana White's homework is a good idea, because it isn't. He isn't Dana White, okay? I mean, for one thing, he never ran away from paying his protection money from the Bulger gang, like White did. So at least he has that going for him. Okay? He has that going for him. But now the UFC is looking at WWE, and they are the biggest gold digger right now because they are looking at all those expenses, all those fighter contracts that they're going to have to eventually restructure because of all the fighter pay lawsuits they've been dealing with, all the venues that are now upcharging them at this point. I mean, UFC is running in places like the Vegas Sphere, that gigantic, ominous eyeball of doom. I'm actually rather surprised that WWE didn't run in the Sphere. I get that it would have been expensive, but given how full of ego and hubris our great dictator and glorious leader Triple H has been this week, I'm rather surprised they didn't run in there. So yeah, this show is going to be ending here like around a few minutes. So thank you so much, folks, for watching this sudden rising of the grave of me, William Fitzpatrick, back into the world of professional wrestling podcasting. with the episode 77 show that has been so cursed for the last 2.5 years. I intended to originally do a New Japan broadcast, and that's when Tony Khan got the Inoki scarf. Apparently, the Inoki curse hit me hard. But I'm back, at least for the time being, and I will see you folks in the next installment. I don't have a concrete date, but it will probably be after April 23rd. That's when some baseball-related stuff is going to be in the works. Until then, have a good day and or night. For all the residents of Vegas, you only have a couple more days until you can kick these wrestling people out of your hotels, and out of your lives, or night. And I will see you next time. Bye, folks.